Welcome to Mysteries of Writing, where many topics are taken into deeper perspective. Today's episode will cover Finish the Story. Every person will define finish the story differently. Every story is different. And each person goes through life differently. No two people are the same. And when it comes to books in particular, no two books are the same thing. I'm not talking about the name and the plot, but I'm talking about the story that is told. That is never told the exact same. Okay, maybe the exception is just copy and pasting, but not the point. Point is, every story is different, no matter what. Even if you take different tropes, even when you take out tropes and put that in your book, it's still different because you're putting your spin to it. And we take for granted when it comes to finishing the story is once the book is done, we're good to go. But that's not true. Because it's all part of process. The process. Finishing the story is all a part of process. Let's take this to the beginning. You have this idea that you want everyone to know. So you brainstorm these ideas, outline the parts of the story that you want to be told in order and to put it on the page. Or you can just write it out as you're thinking about it the moment that you get to it. And it sounds very exciting and very, very new and fresh and a relief. And it is very fun because you're getting started with it and you're constantly going at a rapid pace. Very exciting. Let me talk about the first page really quick because the first page is your make or break moment. That is the first impression someone is going to get whenever they open the book to page 1. You want to make sure that it sets the tone of the story that you are wanting to tell. When we think about the first page, we want to tell them everything. Here's the thing, you can't tell someone everything on one page. That's not how it works. Because if you info dump everything that you want to tell to them, it's not going to get anywhere and they're going to drop the book completely. So avoid the exposition, info dump, or the excessive character description and get to the point. Because that's what the first page is about. Get to the point so that we may get further into the story that you're trying to tell and we can get an understanding of what's going on in the story so we can make connections and see if we can follow along and not get behind. You're continuously gaining an understanding of the story. Like I said, the story is a process. This book, any book that you pick up, there's a process. Each page is another step closer to the finish line of finishing the story. So keep that in mind. And in front of me, I have my own book cover that is covered by my laptop. But I'm looking at that and this is just reminding me of how far I came. But I'll get into that in a few minutes. Okay, so you're reading or writing through the story, and it's pretty good so far. Pretty good. And with the beginning of the story, you usually feel real good about it. Unless it's really hard to write the first page. But the beginning of the story is going really, really well. But then, boom, something gets in your way. Whether it's writer's block or some type of I don't want to say distraction, but I'll say some circumstance in life happens, and life happens. So I'm not going to say expect it, but be aware that life does happen at unexpected times, and you just got to accept that. Or maybe there's just certain roadblocks in your writing, or you're like, oh, I don't know how to write this, or you just are completely blank. Let that sit in for a minute. Completely blank. And I bet you're picturing in your mind, or I assume you're picturing in your mind that it's nothing. It's darkness. Or it could be just a white paper that's very blank and you just want a word on the page, or at least a letter. And whenever that happens, it's okay because you'll get through it. And it doesn't matter how long it might take or whatever you had to do, as long as you keep moving forward. But if you dwell on it for so long and be like, oh, I can't get it out, and man, this is just holding me back from finishing this story, then you're doing something wrong. First of all, you're continuously thinking of that particular part. And if you can't get any of this out, and like I said, that happens. But if you dwell on that, if you just keep thinking about it over and over again, you're not going to get through it. And not easily. It's very important to pause and reflect and assess where you are in that process. And if it's absolutely necessary for you to absolutely take a break, take a break. Because you don't want it to lead to you going to burnout and exhausting yourself to write this story. Then you're going to feel less passionate about it. And you're going to forget why you wanted to write that in the first place. And that's the last thing we all want to do. Because there's always that something, there's that something that wants us to get in there in the first place. And this is with anything you do. And you want that why to stay with you all through the process. And it can happen multiple times. It can. Because it's not a one and done thing. Because if it was a one and done thing, it'd be like, okay, yeah, I got this. Boom. And I'm finished. But no, it's not a one and done thing. It can happen multiple times. And within those multiple times, it doesn't have to be the same thing. It could be similar, but also different. But with the writer's block or that pause allows you to learn something. Allows you to turn off for a little bit. And then get back going with a fresh mindset. I'm not saying, oh, hit the reset button and start over. No. I'm saying pause for a little bit. And then when you're ready, you can get back to it. Getting towards the end of the story. Yes, you're almost done. You're really excited for the end. You can't wait for the last page. But you don't want it to all of a sudden become a flop. What I mean by that is giving 110% from beginning, middle, let's say until the last 20 pages or so. And then you just go down a hill. Part of it is like, what happened? But another part is, why did you do that? Because you were almost there and you just allowed yourself to jump off a cliff. And endings are as important as the beginning of a story, because the ending is where that satisfaction comes into play. And we all want to be satisfied. And without that cherry on top, the icing that guarantees everything, it's not gonna work. It's gonna feel broken and like we've been cheating on, because you just went through the ending like it was nothing. The ending is where you want to like tie a bow so tight that it's hard to unknot, for someone to just loosen it up and just pick at it. Because the last thing you want someone to do is to just dissect and pick on your story so much that it's like, wow, this is awful. So make sure your ending is as good or greater than your beginning, because you want the story to go as smooth as possible all the way through till the end. Let me say, all the way through the last page. And this is something that you had to get right. And I'm not saying there's one way to get it right, but you need to make sure you finish strong and get to the last page. Because that last page is your exclamation mark of the book is finished. Now, after the story is finished, you think you're done. You think it's all the way clean and nothing's wrong. No. There are things that are wrong. But before I get into the nitty-gritty, I want to tell you, get away from your book for as long as possible. I don't care if it's a few weeks, a month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, a year. Get away from it. So you're not constantly thinking about it, and you're like, oh, I just want to do something. I want to change something. No, because you just finished it, and you need to give the story some time to rest. You need to rest. And when you allow yourself some time to rest and allow your book to be a flawed book until you go back to it, you will have a much more fresh mindset going back into it and reading through it and seeing the flaws or just little typos or errors in there, and you'll fix it. I'm not going to say all in one go, but I'm going to say you're going to have better chances of doing it because you gave the book some time to breathe. When you actually get back to it, I'm telling you, it's not going to be easy because you're expecting to change something. Whether it's like the bigger picture of the story or just as little as a sentence or a word. I'll tell you from experience, that is so hard. I've done it multiple times with my first book, and it was hard. It was hard. Very, very hard. I took this 2 different approaches. So, the first approach was immediately after I finished the book, I went back and reading over it and just saw some errors. That was a big mistake. And I was spending a little bit of April of 2022 just fixing it a bit. Bad idea. Do not do that. I should have just kept on going with the second book. But my other approach was revisiting the book and revising and editing. There were multiple times that I didn't finish editing the book. Like, after like a few sessions, I just like, okay, this part needs changing, that part needs changing, and all that stuff. And whenever I was changing a certain part, this was a big one. This was like a character I was changing. That was actually one of my biggest changes I ever done. I knew it was for the better, but that just left a few holes in the book, and it was still incomplete. I still had to read through it and make sure it's all right, but it felt like something was missing or something had to be added or like subtracted or anything. Like, something had to happen. So I left the book alone, and when I got back to it a few times last year, and then about 2 or 3 times this year, I was able to see it with a different perspective. And I saw it more objectively as well, because my goal was to polish it. My goal was to make sure this is the last draft. And after each revision, I made sure I read over the whole thing without editing the book. And I'm telling you how hard that is because it's very tempting. So I see something, I'm like, let me change something. But just know it's all part of the process. And it's okay. It's okay. And I have edited a couple other books as well of my own. And the one I was talking about was like the first of the series. As you go more into writing, you're developing into your own craft and you're discovering your strengths and weaknesses. And with those strengths, keep going with them. But with your weaknesses, you really want to work on them and improve them so they can become one of your strengths. And I'm looking at my book cover that's on my laptop because my book cover, I'll tell you, graphic design is not my biggest strength. I like doing it, but it's not my biggest strength. And ooh, this is a great time to get to this. So I'm going to call this book cover and formatting. Okay? So making book covers are not my strength. I looked at so many of them. I'm like, man, I can never make it like this level. And this is my first book, by the way. And I'm like, man, like, how am I going to make an eye-catching book cover? Like, I need the size and all that, the dimensions and all that stuff. And I was very anxious about it. And then I was like, "What this really sell and all that stuff?" But whenever I like stopped thinking about that and allowed myself to make the best book cover I could make it, the pressure disappeared. Because it doesn't matter what other people think of it. And I can try to make it like based on the genre all I want, but is this really the cover that I want to see? And when I started on the book cover, because I did it a few times, I had a few attempts. And I'll tell you, my first attempts to try and make this book cover was alright, but also not good because they're like color, like some color mishaps, and like it looks so weird, and yeah, and the pictures, I'm not a great artist. It was just questionable and sloppy. It was still alright, but sloppy. Uh and whenever I recently redone my book cover, I'm gonna say the second time, I actually updated it onto a actual software that kind of does like graphic design and all that stuff. I fixed it. I fixed it. Then I downloaded it. And I looked at it and I was like, this is bad. Like, good bad. Like, it's good that I did it. It looked a lot like how I wanted it. Except I was looking at the small things and I was like, you know what? This ain't working out. So I had to push the book cover aside. I was like, I didn't think about the book cover for a day. I didn't even try again. I wasn't going to give up. I was going to do it again, but not that day. But when I went back to it again, I was like, okay, you gotta take this at a different approach. You gotta do something different. Number one, you gotta draw certain things again. And as much as I did not like that, I went with it. It took me a good 30 minutes to an hour to, I'll say, yeah, I'll say about good 30-ish minutes to get that drawing, that design right. Wasn't easy. I removed the background from it, so I had just that. I added it onto that new draft of the book cover, and I was like, yes, this is what I want. This is what I want. And I was playing with it so much, and this was recently. I was like, wow. And I was really enjoying the process, and like the design, I knew the design was going to look like. I found a new image to fix the previous one that I had. It really worked out. But when it came to like what font to use, I was like very concerned. Like, oh, I don't want to get copyrighted or anything. So I'm looking at okay, copyright free fonts and all that stuff. Okay, I got that. Yep. Okay, yep. And I was testing out the different fonts and see what works best for the book. And I thought about making my own. And then I was like, wait, you gotta get this copyrighted? And I'm like, so I just used the font that was provided and testing it out, and it really worked out. It really worked out. Just putting it at the place where it should be, I'm telling you, it's amazing. It's really amazing. And just looking at it right now through my eyes, yeah. And yeah, and I did have the book cover template, and yeah, it helped a lot. It really helped a lot. When it came to the spine, I was trying to be very careful. The spine is usually one of the more challenging things because you don't want to go like over and like you gotta do it just right. And with my book, it's smaller, so I had to be very, very careful. I was like, ah. And since this book I have is a first in the series, I can put the number one and be like, oh, this is number one. Okay. I should keep looking into this and like get to the second and then to the third book. Anyways, yes. And then when it came to the book blurb, okay, y'all, let me tell you about book blurbs really quick because this is part of the process. Because if you want your book to sell, you gotta have an enticing, attention grabbing hook. It's not easy. When I first thought of it, I was like, oh my gosh, there's no way. Because there's like all these guidelines and like, okay, you need to make sure you have this information, but you can't spoil the entire book. Or you had to tell certain things and not tell other things. And you gotta have like 300 words or less, or 200 words or less, depending on who the person is. And yeah, that was me at first. But whenever I actually sat down and was actually doing the book blurb, I was like, trust the process. And I already had like a one liner that I was going to like immediately hook someone in, and I made sure I made that bigger. That was easy. The more challenging part was actually writing the blurb. That had to be like from 100. That had to be like 300 or 200 words or less. And I was taking a few minutes. It was taking me a few minutes to think of it, how to start it, and all that stuff. And let me tell you, this is much harder than writing a book because you are advertising your book so people can buy it. And if that does not convince them to open a book, because you can look at the title and be like, oh, wonderful title, but you want to know what the book is about. You read the back of it, and you're like, is this screaming the title, or I really want to read the book? And you want to make sure that it screams your title and that you want to read the book. And for them to get into it and be curious about it. And with my book blurb that I have, I was like, let's make it as simple as possible. Main characters, this thing, this is what happened without me spoiling the entire book, and a little catch. And then my last paragraph, that's only a sentence, talk about me introducing this type of story that has ever been told. Seriously, it's that short. It's that short and simple. My other two books, I am making sure to match that word count. That's the word count I have for my book blurb is 65 words. So, you telling me I can write a book blurb in that many words? Yes. Yes, you can. I certainly did it. I got to dive right into the point of what I want to tell. Boom. Read my book. My book's not out yet, but it'll be out sometime this year. I'll figure that out. Anyways, the inside of your book. I know. You're like, what? We're back to the inside? Yes. This is all part of the process. The inside of the book. You want the inside of the book to be as beautiful as the outside. I'm not saying go out loud and like get different pictures and all that stuff. No. You want to make sure that it's presentable and that you're like, when you open the page, you're like, oh, my. You want to like have it to be a wonderful reading experience that you don't want to put the book down. You want to sell it. For the past few months, I've been formatting it. Like I'm telling you, I go all over the place and all, but on certain days I will dedicate my time into this particular thing. It would take me hours just on the header and footers alone. Like I would have problems with that endlessly. Like it's either like a margin error or a page error, and I'm like, oh my gosh. Or there might be a page that doesn't have a certain heading. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's ridiculous. It really is ridiculous. And I spend hours of my time just on that. Please. Like, yeah, I'm telling you, there's days that I dedicated my time just on the heading and footing of the book. Gets on my nerves. And I recently changed it again. And yeah. It looks more clean though. And here's a rookie mistake I had. Is that I use double spacing for my book instead of single spacing. And I literally watched a video last week about formatting. And one of the first rules that came up was not having double spacing for your book, instead change it to single spacing. And that changed the way I seen a book forever. Well, my books. I wish I knew that. Because I would have been done with the formatting. But it's okay. It's okay. Part of the process. And learning experience as well. So I know to not do it again. But what I also learned was with your chapters, the first page of a new chapter, you do not have a header or a footer. And I was like, excuse me? Or normally you don't. But especially a header, you don't have anything on there. Because you want that to be looking extra nice and all that stuff. And I was like, oh, okay. So I worked on that as well, and I tried to make the chapter opening appealing by adding a nice little picture somehow. And I actually liked it. I was like, the book looks more formatted and nice. And man, if I didn't watch that formatted video, I would still have double spacing. I would still have those headers and footers on the opening of a chapter page. It would just look like something else. And it's funny, because whenever I did change it to single spacing, it saved a lot of my pages. It cut a good 100 pages off. I was like, oh my gosh, wow. Wow. Okay, that saves paper. All of it is necessary in finishing the story. If you first thought finishing the book was everything, you are 1/3 the way there. The revising, editing, the book formatting, the book cover, whether you do it by yourself or you get a professional to do it, that's another chunk of the process, and that takes time and energy and effort. And then if you want to go further into publishing, that's a whole different beast. I'm not going to explain that in this video, but that is like that is putting the book out there for everyone to see, and you just hope that there's people who want to read your book. And that is the end point right there. Just pressing publish and seeing how the book goes. And right now I'm actually in that process of wanting to get that published and trying to, like learn the waters and all that stuff. Not just putting out there and be like, oh, it'll do. It'll do. No, no, no. That's why I'm continuously learning and, not testing out. Oh, not yet. That's why I'm continuously learning, the trials, errors, and all that stuff, and seeing where it kind of goes before I'm actually like press publish to the book. Because once it's out there, it's like it's pretty much out there forever unless you unpublish it. Creating a book is a process. It takes time, dedication, effort, and you gotta be willing to put the work in. It's really what you make of it, because it can be as sloppy and unfinished and like really, really scrappy. But if you put the work in and polish it and give the book the maintenance it needs, and that's what we want, finish the process.